There is something you were never supposed to hear, something spoken in a quiet moment, in a low voice, in front of someone they trusted. Those words were not meant for a crowd. They were not said for attention. But the weight of them has been moving closer to you every hour, and what was said about you was not ordinary. The person you love stood there for a moment, almost caught between silence and truth, and when they finally began to speak, their tone changed. It became softer, slower, careful, as if they were trying not to damage something precious by naming it too quickly. What they said about you did not begin with your name. It began with silence. A silence so full that it already told part of the story before one word came out. Stay with this, because what happened in that conversation mattered more than they wanted to admit. The person across from them felt it immediately. This was not a casual mention, not a passing memory, not a small thought from the past. There was feeling in the room before your name was ever spoken. They looked away first, not because they had nothing to say, but because there was too much inside them, and they were trying to choose words that would not betray how deep it really went. Then came one simple question from the listener. Why do you keep thinking about them? And for a moment, there was no answer at all. But sometimes a pause says more than a fast reply ever could. Sometimes the truth arrives slowly because the feeling behind it is too large to rush. And when they finally answered, they did it with care, like every word had waited inside them for a very long time. They admitted they could not fully explain it. They said there was just something about you that stayed with them, even while life kept moving, even while days changed, even while other things demanded their attention. That confession did not come lightly. It came after private thoughts, after hidden reflection, after many silent attempts to understand why one person could remain so present even when they were not there in body. The listener noticed something while they spoke. Memories were rising as they talked. Maybe it was your voice that returned to them. Maybe it was your energy. Maybe it was a tiny detail about you that you never imagined anyone would store so carefully in their mind. And that is the part people often miss. Big feelings are not always built from big moments. Sometimes the smallest things leave the deepest mark. Do not click away because the next part revealed even more. The listener asked if the feeling was serious. Again, silence came. But this was not the silence of confusion. It was not uncertainty. It was the silence of someone who already knew the answer and understood that the answer was much bigger than they were used to saying out loud. Then they finally said that every time they tried to ignore it, something brought it back. A memory, a thought, a passing moment, a familiar feeling. That single sentence changed everything. It was no longer about a passing attraction, no longer about a random thought that would disappear with time. It had moved into a deeper place, the place where hidden emotions stop obeying pride, distance, or distraction. The listener leaned in because by then it was clear this was not something temporary. This was something that had lasted through silence and still refused to leave. Then they said something that surprised the listener even more. They did not begin with your looks. They did not talk first about what happened between you, or about timing, or about the outer details people usually use when they want to make feelings sound simple. Instead, they spoke about the feeling that came when they remembered you. They said that even when you were not around, even when they were alone, thinking about you brought them a strange kind of peace. That sentence stayed in the room for a reason. People do not speak about peace unless someone has reached a very deep place inside them. Peace is not a casual word. Peace means your presence touched a part of them where there was usually noise. It means your memory entered spaces where restlessness once lived, and the conversation kept moving. The listener asked another question. Then why have you not said more? This time the answer came faster. Because some things feel too important to speak about carelessly. That answer revealed more than they probably planned to show. Some people protect what matters most, not because it is weak, but because it means so much that one wrong word feels dangerous. They were not hiding because there was nothing there. They were being careful because there was too much there. Then came a sentence no one expected. A sentence so honest, it made the room go still. They said that sometimes they wondered if you truly understood how much you had changed the way they think. Hold on to that. Really, hold on. Because that was the moment the whole conversation shifted. You may never have seen the exact moment your presence began to matter so deeply to them. You may not have known when your words, your energy, or your simple way of being began carving out a place inside their heart. But inside them, that moment stayed. It became something they could not easily erase. After that, their voice became even quieter. They admitted that what they felt had grown into something bigger than they ever planned. Those words were not random. They came from someone who had tried to understand themselves and had discovered that the feeling no longer fit inside simple explanations. Bigger than planned means your importance expanded beyond what they expected. Bigger than planned means what began quietly did not remain small. Then your name came back into the conversation, spoken with a softness the listener could not ignore, as if even saying it changed the air in the room. Then the listener asked one last question that opened everything wider. If they were standing here right now, what would you say? And once again, silence returned. But this silence was not empty. It was full of memory, full of emotion, full of everything they had held back. When they finally spoke, they offered a truth that had clearly lived inside them for a long time. They said they would probably tell you that you matter more than you realize. That was the line that stayed after the conversation should have ended. That was the sentence that kept echoing after both people moved on to other topics, because some words do not disappear once they are spoken. Some words keep living because they come from a place that has waited a long time to be heard. The listener then asked gently if they believed anyone would ever truly understand all of this. After a short pause, the answer came. Probably not, because I never show how much of this stays inside my mind. That line explained something important. Not every feeling arrives with a confession. Not every emotion becomes loud. Some truths stay hidden because the person carrying them is still trying to understand the full size of what they feel. Before the conversation ended, another sentence slipped out, almost like a private thought escaping before it could be stopped. They said that if you ever knew everything they had shared, you would finally understand why letting go of you was never easy. Those words sat heavily in the air. No one rushed to answer, because some sentences carry their own ending. Some truths are already complete the moment they are spoken, but the deeper part was still not finished. Later, when the conversation looked like it was over, something unexpected happened. They did not leave right away. They stayed there for a few extra seconds, as if something unfinished was still resting in their chest. The listener noticed but stayed quiet because silence sometimes gives people room to reveal what they are not ready to say directly. And that silence opened one more door. After a moment, they said something slowly, more honestly than before. There is something strange. Even when I decide not to think about them, something always brings them back. There was no performance in that sentence, no attempt to make it sound dramatic. It was simply truth showing up at the right time. The listener turned fully toward them, because by then it was obvious this was no longer a casual exchange. This was one of those rare moments when someone begins speaking from the part of themselves they usually keep protected. Then came another pause, deeper than the first, because once someone starts telling the truth, one honest feeling often pulls another one into the light. A few seconds later, they continued. It happens at random times, in the middle of normal days, during simple moments, and somehow the feeling comes back stronger instead of fading. That mattered. Ordinary memories usually weaken. They come and go. But when something keeps returning with the same force, or even more, it means something deeper is attached to it. Stay with me, because this is where the hidden meaning became impossible to miss. The listener asked carefully, what comes back first, the memory, the feeling, or the question? There was a brief pause, and then the answer came without resistance. The feeling. That answer changed the meaning of everything. Memories can appear by chance. A person can remember something and feel nothing special, but feelings do not return for no reason. A feeling comes back when something inside still recognizes a bond. It returns when part of the heart believes there is still something unfinished, something valuable, something not easy to dismiss. This time they did not say your name right away. They looked down for a second, almost smiling to themselves, then said that some people stay in your mind in a way that never asks for permission. That line carried weight because everyone understands normal memories. Everyone has people they once knew. But this was different. This was a presence that appeared on its own, without invitation, without effort, without warning. The listener then asked what happens when your name enters their thoughts. This time there was no hiding from the truth. They answered clearly. For a moment, everything else becomes less important. That confession said more than they may have realized. When someone says the rest of the world fades, even briefly, it means their attention naturally moves toward what carries the strongest emotional meaning. Then another sentence followed, spoken with care, almost as if they knew they were revealing too much. I started noticing details I never thought I would care about. The listener asked what kind of details, and after a soft breath, the answer came. The way they speak. Certain words they use. Small things most people would never even notice. That is the quiet proof. Attention reveals importance. People do not keep small details unless those details have slowly become meaningful. The things we remember again and again are usually the things that have already taken a special place in our thoughts. The listener said softly that they sounded like someone who had spent a great deal of time thinking about this person. For the first time, there was no denial. Instead, they answered in a way that changed the feeling of the whole moment. Maybe I have thought about it more than anyone realizes. That sentence carried real weight because private thoughts often run much deeper than visible actions. What people show on the outside is sometimes only a fraction of what they live with on the inside. Then came another confession, one that arrived almost unexpectedly. Sometimes I wonder if they can somehow feel all of this without ever hearing it. That kind of question does not appear unless emotions have already moved beyond simple curiosity. People do not wonder if someone can sense their feelings unless those feelings have already become a serious part of their inner world. Then the listener asked one final question before everything changed again. If they were standing here right now and heard every word you have said, what would be the hardest thing for you to admit? This time, the silence lasted longer. Not empty, not uncomfortable, just full of searching, full of truth trying to find its way into words. And when the answer finally came, it was simple and devastating in the quietest way. I have tried to act normal while carrying much more than I ever expected. That sentence said more than a dramatic confession ever could. Acting normal means something inside has already shifted. Carrying more than expected means the feeling has already crossed the boundaries they once thought it would never cross. People do not always hide feelings because those feelings are small. Sometimes they hide them because they have become too big to explain without changing everything. Before they walked away, they added one more thought, and what happened after that revealed even more than the conversation itself. So keep listening, because the strongest proof was still waiting in the silence after the words. After they left, the moment should have ended, but it did not, because sometimes the clearest evidence of what someone feels is not found in what they say when asked. It is found in what they do when no one is asking them anything at all. They walked a few steps away and then suddenly stopped. No one called them back. Nothing interrupted them. They stopped because their own thoughts had become louder than the world around them. In that quiet second, there was no audience, no pressure, no need to protect themselves. Only their own feelings remained. They stood there for a few moments, almost replaying every word they had just admitted, every sentence, every emotion, every truth they had finally allowed to rise to the surface. Then, very softly, almost under their breath, they repeated your name one more time. And that small act carried meaning. People do not repeat someone's name in silence unless that name is still tied to something living inside them. The listener, who had not gone far, noticed and asked one more unexpected question. Why do you always become quiet after talking about them? This time, there was no attempt to avoid the answer. It came honestly. Every time I speak openly about them, I realize how much I usually leave unsaid. That line changed everything that came before it, because it showed that even all the words already spoken were only part of the truth. They were not the whole story. They were only the pieces that escaped. Then the listener asked carefully, "What is still left unsaid?" Another pause followed, but it was not tense. It was full of thought, full of memory, full of the weight of everything not yet named. And then the answer came in a softer voice. Some days I pretend I am focused on other things, but even then something small reminds me of them before the day ends. That simple sentence carried a deep meaning because remembering someone in ordinary moments often says more than remembering them in special ones. Anyone can think about someone when something obvious brings them back. But when a person keeps appearing during normal hours, during quiet routines, during simple parts of the day, it means they have already become part of your inner life. The listener asked what kind of small things could bring those memories back so easily. This time the answer came fast, like those moments had been noticed many times before. A phrase, a sound, a familiar place, even an ordinary moment that suddenly feels connected to them. Those words revealed something important. Real connection cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured by trying too hard. It appears naturally when someone has already taken a real place in your thoughts and emotions. Then, for the first time, a smile appeared, one they could not fully hide. It was small, but it was real. The listener noticed and asked why they were smiling. The answer was quiet and unexpectedly tender, because sometimes the memories arrive before I even choose to remember them. That line stayed in the air because it was too honest to ignore. When memories return without effort, it means that person has become part of your natural thinking. Not because you are holding on by force, not because you are trying to relive something, but because something inside you keeps moving back to them on its own. The listener then said softly, "You speak as if they changed something important in you." After a short breath, the answer came. They did, even if they never fully realized it. That confession shifted the whole tone of the moment, because people do not casually say that someone changed them. A person only admits that when another soul has left a mark that stayed. Then another sentence followed, one that surprised even the listener. There are moments when I wonder if they understand how naturally my thoughts return to them. Not because I force it, not because I go looking for it. It simply happens. And that word mattered. Naturally. Because what returns naturally usually comes from a deeper place than what must be chased. The listener asked one final question before the moment ended for good. If one day they heard every word you said today, what would surprise them the most? This time the answer came without hesitation. I speak carefully on the outside, but inside my thoughts are much louder. That was the truth running through the whole conversation. A person can look calm while carrying a storm of feeling within. Sometimes fewer words do not mean fewer emotions. Sometimes fewer words mean there is too much to explain. And before leaving fully, they shared one last truth. Sometimes the things that matter most show themselves through the things we never say aloud. That sentence stayed long after everything else had passed, because some truths do not need to be shouted to become unforgettable. Some feelings do not need constant proof to be real. Sometimes the deepest emotions are the ones carried quietly through ordinary hours, small routines and silent moments nobody else sees. And when they were finally alone, something even deeper happened. Away from questions, away from conversation, away from the need to explain anything to anyone. Their thoughts became the only voice left. In that silence, they realized something they had been trying not to admit. The person they kept trying not to think about had already become someone they could not easily forget. Not because they wanted to cling to the past, not because they were searching for a reason, but because some people leave an impact that continues long after the moment seems over. Some connections do not arrive with noise. They do not announce themselves. They simply remain. They return in memory. They return in details. They return in the quiet spaces of an ordinary day. And sometimes the deepest feeling is not the one spoken in front of others. It is the one a person finally admits to themselves when no one else is there to hear it. That was the truth underneath every word. The conversation ended, but what they felt did not end with it. And maybe that is the part you were meant to understand all along. Not every important feeling comes with a clear confession. Not every strong emotion arrives wrapped in certainty or spoken in perfect words. Some of the strongest things are revealed slowly, through pauses, through repeated thoughts, through the softness in a voice, through the details someone remembers without trying, through the way your name changes the room when it is spoken. What they said about you was not simple, it was not casual, it was not empty. It came from a place inside them that had been carrying more than they usually let anyone see. They may not have told you directly, they may still be trying to understand it themselves, but the truth was already there, rising between the lines, showing itself in every silence, every careful answer, every moment they stopped pretending it was small. So if you have ever wondered whether you truly mattered, whether your presence stayed with them after the moment passed, whether your memory had any real weight inside their life, listen closely to what was revealed. You were not just remembered, you were felt, not once, not by accident, again and again, in ordinary moments, in quiet hours, in the spaces where people can no longer hide from themselves, and that matters more than loud promises, more than quick words, more than surface signs, because what lasts in silence often reaches deeper than what is easily spoken. So stay with that truth for a moment. Let it settle. Let it breathe. Let it say what it came to say. Sometimes the strongest message is not that someone spoke your name. It is the way they softened before they did. It is the way they paused because the feeling was too real to rush. It is the way they kept returning to you even when they tried not to. And if you made it this far, then you already understand the heart of it. Some people leave, some memories fade, but some connections keep living quietly inside a person, waiting, returning, speaking in silence long before they ever speak aloud.